This is our city, and I am so glad that God has called us to be the epicenter of hope in this city, but also the catalyst for hope in the world. For the past several years, I've asked you to participate in a Christmas offering, which has allowed us to fund so many different projects and to affect so many different lives. This year, we want to think big when it comes to our generosity. What if we came together and raised $50,000 to give away locally, nationally, and globally? So how is this going to work? If you are participating in the Hope for All campaign, that means you've pledged a certain amount. I want you to just give towards that as your contribution to this Christmas offering. If you've not been a part of Hope for All, I want you to prayerfully give a one-time gift to this Christmas offering. And so we want to bring in more than $50,000, but the first $50,000, we're just going to give that away locally, nationally, and globally. So would you join me? Let's do this together. I know it's going to take sacrifice. I know it's going to take creativity, but I believe if we do this together, we can make a difference. God has called us to be the epicenter of hope, starting in this city. So join me December 9th. Let's come together and see what God is able to do. I know that He's able to do far more than we can ask or imagine. Hey guys, so we're back again, and thanks for joining us for week 4 of our series. So let me just say, for those of you who just tuned in, this is Mosaic Church. We are online because it's been snowed out in Charlotte, North Carolina. So regardless where you are in the world, we are glad that you're joining us. And we're part of a conversation right now that we started several weeks ago. It's called Glow, and it's really connected to this passage of Scripture that we've been talking about a little bit, and that's Matthew chapter 5. Let me read this to you. Matthew chapter 5, verse 14, it says this: "You are the light of the world, a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden." It's Jesus proclaiming to us that we could be more than we are just, not just as a separate person, but also as a community. That when we gather together, there's something synergistic that can take place. And so we've been unpacking that. What does it look like? So week 1 of Glow, we talked about this idea that Jesus didn't die for our sins so we could become Christians. He died and rose again so we could become the church. And so I actually said, hey, let's stop being Christians and focusing on that. Let's be a part of this, again, synergistic movement, this idea of where we can come together and be the church, because it's the church that the gates of hell cannot come against. It's not just us, it's actually when we come together. So that was week 1. Week 2, it talked about how we need to be aware that we have a part to play. Like we have a part to play when we acknowledge that we are a church. And so what that means is that our part is actually to go and tell. Sometimes, so often we think that church is about, okay, if we're going to be church people, then we need to come and sit. And so the idea is we just come and sit and learn and grow and get fed, and that's great, but if you look at the teachings of Jesus, it's really about us going and telling what God has done for us, furthering the movement of Jesus and advancing His kingdom. And so then week 3, we talked about this idea that, I love the idea that last week we unpacked, hey, are you living with a cause, or are you living because? I mean, most people live because of this and live a life because of that, and their quality of life is because of what's happening to them or what is happening around them or what has happened to them. But could we live our life with a cause? And I encourage you to do that. So this is part of all those conversations. So week 4, this is week 4. We are talking about what I want to, really excited about actually, is this idea of not giving ourselves to fear. And what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, obviously this weekend has been interesting because I'm doing a live broadcast here and you're at home. And this weekend, we actually plan to do our Christmas offering. And our Christmas offering, if those of you who don't know, it was we wanted to raise $50,000 to give away to local, national, and global causes. And we ask you guys to give, and some of you guys are giving end of year giving as well. And some of you have already given to the Christmas offering online. And I want to let you know that this weekend is not exactly what we planned, but God can obviously use it. So this weekend was supposed to be our Christmas offering weekend, and you guys plan to bring your offering or give your offering this weekend. Some of you guys already have. Now, if you're one of those who go, yeah, I still wanted to, and this weekend was significant for me because I've been praying about it, I've been sacrificing, and I've been being prompted to give, and I'm wrestling through it, so I really want to give. Let me just tell you, you can still give right now. You can go on our website, you can go into the Give tab, or you can, if you've never been, you've never given before, you can actually go online and start that, or you can just text Hope for All to 77977, and you can just start and set up your giving online, and we'd love for you to do that. And I'm so thankful for those of you who are doing that right now and who have joined us together. And I want to say thank you for giving. But I want to say also that next weekend, so on the 16th, next Sunday, it'll be our Christmas offering weekend. So if you're planning on coming and giving, and I know we've canceled services, obviously here at the Hope Center, but also at Metro. And so if you were thinking, man, I want to come and be a part of something, we're still going to celebrate together next Sunday. So you can give as well on next Sunday. I want to say this, though. Thank you so much for doing that, because when you give and when we come together, regardless of what we do, when we do it together, it's always significantly more than we could do alone. So thank you so much. So this morning, what I want to do is I want to talk about this idea of, okay, what does it mean to not lose ourselves to fear? Not lose ourselves to fear. Now, what does that mean? And what do we need to do besides that? Not losing ourselves to fear. Let me explain it this way. So, I got a text from a guy the other day, and he's an Indian guy that his name is Manu. You might have know him. He's part of our community. He grew up Hindu, and we baptized him recently, and he has just a great story. I got a text from him, and he sent me this YouTube video of a live experience of Starry Night. It's like a stereo RV experience. It's on YouTube. I don't know exactly what that means, but it's cool because the video is like you're going inside the painting of Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. Now, he sent it to me because those of you who might not know the significance, it's kind of been our thing. Like the painting has been our thing because it's been a great illustration for our mission, like the reason why we exist. And so we kind of launched this big idea that what if we were a church that reclaimed the message and the movement of Jesus? And to illustrate that, I talked about the Starry Night. And so when he sent me that, I was like, this is cool, and I love it that he did. And he sent me this thing, and I looked at it, and I just realized, man, we are actually doing that. Like, we're part of the Starry Night, as in we're part of reclaiming Starry Night. Now, Starry Night, if you don't know anything about it, you can Google it. You can actually open up a tab right now and just kind of look at what it means, what it looks like, and you can do that. But the cool thing about that is that, I guess cool, sad I would say actually, but it's Vincent van Gogh's indictment against the church, because Starry Night is a painting where everything else is lit up, and the only thing that's in the center of the painting that's not lit up is the church. So he's kind of saying that there's light everywhere, but not in the church. And so that's why it's been a great illustration for us. It's been our battle cry to go, hey, you know what? We're going to be the opposite. We're going to have light in the church. We're going to bring back the light in the church, and we are this church that exists to reclaim the movement, reclaim the message of Jesus. So when you give to that, just so you know, thank you, because you're doing that. You're making that happen, and we are living that out. And you know what's interesting about that painting is that I think part of the things about church that Vincent van Gogh did not like is the kind of people that it was making. I recently read a book by him, his autobiography by Ivan Stone called The Lust for Life, and he talks about the challenges that Vincent van Gogh have. But I remember this idea of becoming a person was very important to him. And you know what I love about that is that it's really the message of Jesus. Like, I don't know if you realize this, but the message of Jesus was never to believe in something. Like, for example, it's never been about something to believe in. Like Christianity, it's never been something to believe in. It's about someone to become. It's about becoming a certain kind of people. Jesus died and rose again, not just that we could start believing the right things, but actually becoming the right people. He died to take away our sins, to make us righteous, which means right standing with God, to make us a certain kind of person, to make us righteous. And so it's really about not doing or believing, but it's actually about becoming a certain person or being a certain kind of person. Because when you focus on believing, it's all about your performance. And if it's ever connected to your performance, I don't know about you, but I'm worried about my performance, so it's all about me. And so that's how we become like just Christians, because we all focus on our belief and do it right in our performance, and we just lose the fact that we're actually trying to become a certain kind of people. And we're trying to become the church that Jesus died for. And so all this is so important, because I think that when we talk about this idea of losing ourselves to fear, it's connected to becoming the right kind of person. And what I want to do is I want to talk to you about that and link it to the conversation we're in about giving and being generous. What does it even look like? So I want to take you to a story and talk to you a little bit about that. But before I get into that, I was reading a book recently by a guy named Richard Rohr, and it's called The Art of Letting Go. And in the book, he actually talks about two other books, and one by George Orwell, and it's called 1984. And it's a novel, and maybe you've read this. It's pretty fascinating. He talks about this book, 1984. And in this novel, it's kind of a prophetic. I use that word, but it feels prophetic because it talks about a society in the future that we could be in danger of becoming. It talks about this idea that we could become a society that's governed by propaganda and surveillance and censorship. And it's all about control, like Big Brother is going to be all about us. And so we're going to become this society that's going to be controlled by fear, right? So that's his novel. Okay, it's called 1984. Maybe you've heard of it. So the other book he mentions, though, it's called The Brave New World by this guy named, it's called Brave New World, and it's a novel as well, but it's, let me read this here. It's by Huxley. It's by Aldous Huxley, and this novel is connected to that novel because it was just as famous, I would think, but this book talks about a future society that we are in danger of becoming, but it's different. It says we are going to be controlled by something, but it's not necessarily things we fear. So let me explain how Richard Rohr says it. He says basically that one writer in the book of the guy who wrote 1984, he talks about that we are in danger of becoming a society that would be controlled by pain. And so there would be censorship, there would be surveillance, there would be this Big Brother. People would be controlled by fear and pain. The other guy in The Brave New World, this author, Huxley, he talks about that no, we're actually in danger of being controlled by pleasure. So one writer says, hey, no, we're going to be, there's going to be a society that there's going to be so much censorship. And the other guy says, no, there won't be need of censorship because people will not be really looking for the truth. One writer says, hey, no, we're going to be a society that's controlled by our fears. The other guy says, no, we're actually going to be too entertained to be aware of things we need to fear about. It's really interesting. One says we're going to be controlled by pain. The other one says we're going to be controlled by pleasure. It's really interesting. And one line in there, he writes, he says, as we fear the freedoms that are going to be taken away from us, as we are fearing those freedoms, we're actually going to take away our own freedom. Very interesting thought, right? As we worry about people taking away our freedom, we're actually going to be taking away our own freedom. What does that all have to do with what we're talking about this morning, right? Well, what's the big idea? Why is this so fascinating? I don't know. It might be just fascinating to me. I think it's super fascinating because it all talks about the kind of people we're becoming and the kind of church that we are becoming. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been controlled by fear? Like, are there things you're afraid of? Now, really quick now, you're probably commenting, if you're online, you can comment, right? You can do that, and we'd love for you to comment. Say hi to people, because there are people on staff that are online hosting. People have already said hi. If you're just joining us, you can say hi as well and comment. Maybe you could write down, what are your biggest fears? I mean, not you don't have to go that deep, but I'm sure you're afraid of something. I mean, I remember growing up saying that I remember the smell of my dad's armpit. I know, it's disgusting. Because I was afraid, I grew up being scared of movies, and I'd crawl into bed and crawl into his armpit, and then I just remember that smell. It's so weird. I can still remember his smell. It's so strange. But I've had all kinds of fear that I've struggled with, and I've had to struggle with fear of all kinds of things. I mean, I'm afraid of evil movies, truly strange food. I'm afraid of that because I'm afraid of what it might do to me. If you can relate, say comment. Roller coasters, any roller coasters? Oh gosh, I hate roller coasters. Skydiving is another one. I know it's one of those fears. I talk about it, but I'm scared to death of that. Being lost at sea. Oh my gosh. That would freak me out. Write down what you're afraid of, but that would freak me out. And what's funny about me, though, is I know that I'm afraid of certain things, but I want to conquer them. Like, I want to conquer them. Like this past weekend, Sabrina Shin and Karen Shin, who are not related, but they're both on staff, and they introduced me to a taco, a cow tongue taco. Yes, taco de Lagas, I believe. Oh my gosh, it's a cow tongue taco, and they told me to try it, and I was like, I'm not going to do this, and part of me was like, just do it, and I ate it, friends, I ate it. Yeah, I'm not going to order it again. Never going to do that. But anyways, cow tongue. Ugh. Anyways, if you like that, something wrong with you. But I did that because I didn't want to be that person who'd be scared of doing it. And so it's funny because as I thought about that, I recently was at Metro, and this past week or so, and I was with Brian Patnode. So if you guys don't know Brian Patnode, he actually is the whiz behind a lot of things we do. I mean, he does production, he does video editing. This guy is the reason why I'm actually coming to you through live stream, okay? And so he's that guy. So I was putting up lights, anyways, we were at Metro campus putting up lights. And by the way, Metro, you're in the house, right? He hooked you up. So he had to go up on this ladder that's about, 30 feet high, maybe 40. I don't know. It felt like that. And I just asked him. I was like, dude, are you not afraid of going up this thing? And he looked at me and he said, yeah, I am. I was like, what? I said, I can't believe you're not afraid of heights. And he was like, no, I am. And then he went up there. And I'm like, what? It made me kind of think of like this, becoming that person who goes, you know what? I know I'm afraid of this, but I'm going to conquer it. I'm going to figure this out. I love that. So I tell you all of this because I don't know if you kind of put it together. See, fear, when you lose yourself to fear doesn't just rob you from experiences. Like, it doesn't rob you from experiencing certain things or rob you from a certain experience. It actually robs you from becoming a certain kind of person. Our fears rob us not just from experiences, but from ourselves. we lose ourselves. And that's why I don't want you to lose yourself to fear. There's a part of you that's not going to be developed, that's not going to be tapped into because of your fears. And so this morning, I want you to understand one thing. I want you to understand that I want you to not lose yourself to fear, but I want you to give yourself to love. So don't lose yourself to fear, but give yourself to love. See, my fears are not just cow tongue and heights. My fears are as deep as yours. Fear of rejection, fear of failure. Oh my gosh, I can't believe, I hate that. Fear of heartbreak, loneliness, fear of loss, fear of betrayal, abandonment. We have some real fears. But when we allow those fears to dictate our lives, they don't just rob us from experiences, they rob us from becoming a certain kind of person. So this morning, I wonder, are you allowing fear to rob you from becoming a certain kind of person? So here's what I want you to do. I want you, don't lose yourself to fear. Give yourself to love. Don't lose yourself to fear. Say it with me. Say it with me. Don't lose yourself to fear. Give yourself to love. 1 John says this: there's no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. It drives out fear. What does this have to do with this series? Well, it has a lot to do with this series, because I believe that some of us, when we think about giving away the funds that we have, the money that we've earned, when we think about a Christmas offering and this idea of being generous to others, there's a fear attached to it. I know I believe that there are people who, most people want to be generous, but there's a fear. There's a fear of a lack of resources that keeps them. And what happens is when you lose yourself to fear, you give yourself to greed. You know what I'm saying? But if you give yourself to love, you actually give yourself to generosity. I mean, there is a tension there. The best way to understand this is in a story. It's actually a great story. It's in Luke chapter 7, I'm going to read verses 40 to 47. But Luke chapter 7 is a great story that illustrates this idea of like becoming a certain person and then not losing yourself to fear, but actually giving yourself to love. It's a story about this woman who washes Jesus' feet with oil and her tears. If you've ever read the Bible, you probably have heard this story. And so here's the scene. Jesus is invited to a religious leader's house, and he's there. This woman walks in, and she's hanging around the people. It's kind of like I guess it's an open dinner kind of situation because she walks right in. People know who she is, but she's there, and things are happening. They're eating, they're doing their stuff, but then she begins to weep, and then she's beside herself, and she just allows herself to express herself, and she has this alabaster jar, which means that it's perfume, it's expensive stuff, and she just comes to Jesus, goes down, breaks or opens the jar, and she begins to anoint Jesus' feet, like she's washing them in one sense, or putting oil on his feet, and is crying, and she's doing kind of like this act of worship, and she loses herself to that. I mean, she just basically is giving herself to that and just kind of doesn't care what other people think. Obviously, people are thinking some thoughts. And as Jesus is looking at what she's doing, he's looking around, and they're talking about what has happened. And they're talking about the fact that they can't believe that this woman's doing this, and they can't believe that Jesus is allowing this woman to do this, because if he would have known that this woman is kind of like has a reputation, and if he was really, prophet from God, he would know who was touching him, and all kinds of stuff. And they're just judging all. There's a lot of haters in the room. And Jesus starts talking, and so verse 40. Here's what he says. Jesus answered him, "Simon, I have something to tell you." Tell me, teacher," he said. "Two people owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii and the other 50. So 550. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave the debts above. Now, which of them will love him more? Simon replied, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven. You have judged correctly, Jesus said. Then he turned towards the woman and said to Simon, I love this, right? He turns to the woman and looks to him and basically says, I want you to witness this. And he goes, do you see this woman? Of course, everybody saw this woman. I mean, who did not see this woman? Okay, everybody saw this woman. Do you see this woman? I came into your house. You did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman, from the time I entered, has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore, I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven. As great as her great love has shown. And then he says this, but whoever has been forgiven little loves little. Whoever has been forgiven little loves little. Man, the story is really about losing yourself, or giving yourself. Losing yourself to fear, meaning the lack of money. Losing yourself from becoming a generous person. Jesus says, hey, the reason why you can't be so generous, the reason why you don't love a whole lot is because you just don't love a whole lot and you don't think you've been forgiven a whole lot. But she knows how much she's being forgiven. And she knows the depth of her sin. She knows the depth of who she is. And now she's giving herself to love. But you've lost yourself. You've lost yourself in your fear of image. You've lost yourself in a lot of things. And here he says, hey, you are worried about how expensive this perfume is. She is being so generous. She is giving herself to gratitude because she loves so much. And you are worried about this perfume. You are worried about image. You're worried about all kinds of things. And he's saying this in this story. He's saying, hey, money promises stuff that only God provides. Only God can provide. Security, significance, freedom, joy, and even power. It's only God. God provides those things. Money cannot. And you know what's amazing? Generosity actually gives back what greed takes from us. Generosity takes back what greed takes from us. And that's why we should never lose ourselves to greed, but you need to give ourselves to generosity. And what that means is we should never lose ourselves to fear. Because you know what fear is? Fear is this idea of focusing on self and self-cautiousness and self-focus and all this. And at some point, you just become selfish. But man, love means you give yourself to generosity. Giving yourself to love means a whole lot of things. When you choose to love, it means you choose to give yourself to the act of love. And the act of love, let me just define that for you. Love demands, here's what love is. Love demands courageous acts of gratitude, compassion, and risk. Let me say it one more time. Love demands courageous acts of gratitude, compassion, and risk. James 1:27. Pure and genuine religion in the sight of God the Father means caring for orphans and widows in their distress and refusing to let the world corrupt you. What's he saying here? Hey, you want a pure religion? You want a real sense of spirituality? Understand something. It's all about who you're becoming. Don't let this world corrupt you. Don't let this world make you into someone else. Don't lose yourself to this world. And this world will continually focus on the fears and focus on the self. Here's what true religion is. You give yourself to love. You give yourself on providing for others, orphans and widows. You give yourself to courageous acts of gratitude, compassion, and risk. That's what this woman was doing. She gave herself to love and chose not to lose herself to the fear of other people, what they might think about her, what they might think of her act, what they might think of what she's doing. But she chose to give herself fully to this act of love, this courageous act of gratitude, compassion, and risk. Let me ask you this. How can you give yourself to love? How can you give yourself to love? Because when you do that, you won't lose yourself to fear. And see, when it comes to your relationships, when it comes to your life and career, and the world you live in, you get to choose every day. You're going to get to choose this week. Are you going to lose yourself to fear, or are you going to give yourself to love? But love demands courageous acts of what? Gratitude, compassion, and risk. And see, when it comes to this Christmas offering, when it comes to giving and being generous with our funds and our money, it's all about fear and love. You know, you either will lose yourself to fear because you're afraid of like, what about me? What about my family? What about this? What about that? What about this? What about? Or you'll give yourself to love and you'll give yourself away. And it demands what? It demands courageous acts of compassion, gratitude, and risk. But I do believe this. I believe Proverbs 11, it says this: a generous person will prosper. Those who refresh others will be what? Refreshed. There's something about that. When we choose to love, when we choose to refresh others, it actually refreshes us. When we give ourselves to love, it makes us a certain kind of person. And I love the fact that we, as a church, are choosing to be that. If you're joining us, I want to ask you, hey, how are you going to choose to give yourself to love? Don't lose yourself to fear. And let's be a church. Let's be the church that gives itself to love. And so when you think of the Christmas offering, you think of giving, hey, don't let fear control your finances. Don't let it. Let generosity lead the way. Make sure you refresh others, because it's the only way you yourself will be refreshed. So, I want to pray for you. So what do you want? What do you need to do? What do you need to give yourself to? What do you need to give? What does it look like for you to give yourself to love? I think for some of you, you need to give yourself to love by giving your life to God, like giving your life to Jesus. This might be the first time you're tuning in. I mean, someone told you about this, and you jumped online, and you're like, okay, I'll try this, and you're in your pajamas, and, your dogs are with you, and, hey, I get it. It's great. But this is a moment. Maybe God's saying, hey, why don't you give yourself to me? Giving yourself to love is giving yourself to Jesus, giving your life to Him. And maybe this is the most important moment for you. This is why you tuned in. Because you know this, so often and so many times and for so long, you've given yourself to fear. You've allowed fear, anxiety, worry, insecurity to rule your life, your relationships, your finances, everything about you. Today, though, you can choose to give yourself to love, to Him who loves you the most. And so I just pray that you would just say, hey, God, I'm giving you myself today. So for some of you, it's your finances. For some of you, it's your spirituality. It's your relationship with God. For others of you, it's your relationships. What is it? Let me pray for you. Lord God, I just thank you so much for this conversation. I pray, God, that as we look at this story, we would be inspired by this woman whose story has been told again and again for thousands of years. How, God, she gave herself to love and didn't lose herself in the fear of other people, in the fear of insecurity and anxiousness, and how she would provide for herself. She gave this expensive perfume away. She kind of wasted it on you in one sense. God, what's beautiful about the story is that when we waste our lives on you, when we waste our money and our resources on you, it actually refreshes our souls and it allows us to become the people we were meant to be. God, for some of us, this is the moment where we need to choose to become the people we're meant to be, to actually take the next step of faith. For some of us, it is to actually participate in this Christmas offering. For others of us, it is that and giving ourselves to you, giving our life to you, simply saying, Jesus, I give you my life. And others of us, God, this week, we're going to make a commitment to choose to give ourselves to love, to courageous acts of gratitude, compassion, and risk, not to lose ourselves, our very soul, to fear and anxiousness and doubt. God, we love you. We thank you. In Jesus' name we pray.